Stathopoulos and Josh Phegan come together in an incredible podcast, Grow, Scale, Master.
An energetic approach to drive progress, master skills, build strengths and put the strategy back into rapid business and personal success.
Backed by real-world experience in rapid scaling to playing the long-term game of business, it's the story of all the lessons learned on the journey to mastery.
Be inspired, renew your energy and chase the future with Grow, Scale, Master.
Con, today's going to be a big one. The secrets to organisational success.
Love it.
Now, the interesting thing is I love this. There are going to be three areas that we're going to look at. Leadership development, scalable infrastructure, and marketing effectiveness.
Okay.
What is leadership development?
I don't know.
I love it. Admitting that you don't know. Yeah, that's good.
Matt, I'm still learning. So I think leadership development is being able to take people that demonstrate capabilities of being able to help others more than they want to help themselves.
Are leaders born or made?
I think both.
Yeah.
I think genuinely both, because I don't think I was born a leader. I think I was made into a leader, but I had leadership skills, from sport when I was a young kid. But I think for me, leadership development is about making sure that you've got people that want to be able to help more people than helping themselves first, if that makes sense.
And I think the whole idea in terms of leadership is you send people on great quests and they discover their leadership capabilities.
Yeah, you're right.
And I always think about this is that there's an old school saying, I don't need to be in control, but if no one's in control, then I'm in control.
Yeah.
So I'll often sit back very passively and not be involved in something, because I don't need to be the leader because someone's clearly in that leadership role.
Yeah.
But in absence of any leader being...
Well, then you are the leader.
Then I'll step in straight away. So I'll be the first in the emergency, to jump into that role if no one else is taking responsibility on that. I always think about this in terms of leadership development, that people will never be ready. So there's this thing that when I hit a certain age,
no, it's got nothing to do with
once I
that.
become a mum or a dad, or once this happens, then I'll be ready. And I just think that the leadership skill is to say, okay, great. It's about teaching and training and testing people to be able to grow those skill sets over a period of time. And I always just think about this, with my own teams, what's the next conversation that I need to have that unlocks a new level of capability, a new level of fulfillment, a new level of energy inside of that person, so then they can go and perform at a completely different level. And are they, in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 or 20 years that they spend working inside of our organisation, do they become a better person in society? Do they become more fulfilled inside of what they do? Do they feel like they're actually getting achievement and progress and success? Yeah. And I think that sometimes you look at that and you think, a lot of employers maybe don't think that way, but I definitely do think that way. And that outside of just the financial realms, what are the experiences and the skill sets that these people are gaining that are going to produce them? And I want them to be able to go a year or 5 or 10 years down the track and go, geez, working with that particular business was absolutely one of the best foundational things inside of my career. And, Kyle and I would talk a lot about it, that we learned a lot through newspapers, and we had some phenomenal teachers and some phenomenal managers and leaders that led us in that newspaper era that has actually really helped us to really build a great business today. And I always just think about that is that, the way that you grow in leadership development is to put people into pressure situations. And because literally in those pressurized situations, it's actually where they get to raise and to be able to put those new skills into play. This is an important thing because a lot of people don't consider themselves leaders, and you've been in conferences where I've done that and said, hey, pop your hand up if you're a leader, and those people with titles usually do and the rest normally don't. And then I say, okay, great, and now put your hand up if you're a leader in your own life, and most people put their hands up if they don't check in with their wife. but the basic idea is about really understanding that is an important thing, to think that leadership happens at every level inside of the organisation. The next one is then thinking about scalable infrastructure, and you've really had to think a lot about this because in starting a business, but also then in taking over a business, or integrating, I should say more broadly, a business into your existing one. And there's some different things that actually happen. And what I want you to think about is that, does it work at 1 office? Does it work at 2 offices? Does it work at 3? Does it work at 5? Does it work at 8 offices? Every single time that you add a different department, a different service line, you buy in an extra 100 property managements, you grow a different geographical region, I assume that puts pressure back on infrastructure, and it gets you to really think about, well, does this infrastructure scale? Because most organizations are, the culture's awesome when we've got 1 office, but when they go to 2, all of a sudden there's gaping holes, and one's a great office and the other one's not so much. Is that important to get right in terms of scalable infrastructure, to think about, will it scale?
Yeah, 100%. And it doesn't happen by accident. You have to be really deliberate and on purpose with this. So you're absolutely right. We've gone from, one office, 7 people to, 7 offices, 8 with our projects division, a virtual office, to 220 people. We've gone from 300 managements to 3,300 managements, and we've gone from 99 sales to 2,500 sales in 5 years. So for us, it's been very deliberate. But what this shows, going back to your earlier bit on leadership, is if we didn't have the right leaders in the business, and I'm not talking about the head of, I'm just talking about people in the roles, we couldn't have onboarded 1,000 new managements in October and November of last year to be able to enable business continuity and experience to our existing landlords and tenants.
Yeah.
So what it's taught us is that we need leaders at all levels. What it's taught us is that, and this might sound wrong, or I might be framing it wrong, but at what point do we break? And it's not about breaking people, but at what point does the system break? So, if you're testing to get a rocket ship up there, you want them to blow up a few times before it actually goes up there, so you don't know it's going to blow up, right? So, so it's enabled us to be really able to be on purpose when we're going through our infrastructure, systems, processes, technology, customer experience, internal, but also very mindful that this is the opportunity for people to step up. You know what I mean? So we've been very deliberate around, how scalable and what needs to be scaled to enable us that next level of growth.
And on that next stage of growth, about thinking, well, what's the next role that's required in the organisational structure? So whether or not that's people, culture, training, development, compliance.
Spot on.
Like we're going to have all this AML stuff come in this year. Someone's going to be a compliance officer on that. Yep. What does that actually look like? But scalable infrastructure is really important because, and I think that, a lot of people kind of learnt this. Do you remember when COVID happened and people were like, oh my God, everyone's rushing to Harvey Norman and Officeworks to buy laptops so people could work from home? And I was just like, oh man, and it's kind of bizarre, and I probably wasn't always right. But when I first started the training business, I'm like, I want to be able to run the business as though I'm like on a beach in France.
And
so,
Tim Ferriss.
And so when I had a fax machine.
Oh, wow.
So this is going back. I had the first, that I knew was a virtual fax. And so what it was is that when people faxed it, it went to an email.
Yeah, correct.
And that was well before that was a thing. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, great. And then I was like, I want to look international. And I had a New York post office box.
Oh, get out of here.
And then if you sent mail there, they automatically scanned the mail and sent it as an email.
Perfect.
And then literally, and so but everything was kind of done that way. That was how we were thinking well before it actually turned up.
Yeah.
And so I think I probably didn't have the positioning of that correct, but the thinking was actually very sound, because the whole idea here is about thinking about scalable infrastructure. So if we had 50 salespeople, would we still do it this way? If we had 5 offices, would we still do it this way?
Yeah.
And learning how to then scale personal relationships and, making sure that people got name tags at training events and doing all of those things are going to be really important, because when the organization's at 500 people, how am I going to remember the names of all 500 people?
Correct. Yeah.
And so this is actually a really interesting thing to then get into, that beyond leadership development and scalable infrastructure is then about marketing effectiveness. Now, Con, I don't know about you, but once your email address gets out in the world, you start getting a ton of different emails. And I reckon that I would be hit 9 to 15 times a day by someone saying, hey, this person would be a great specialist to be on your podcast. Or, oh, hey, by the way, this is how you could scale and grow your coaching business, from businesses that I've never even heard of and people that I don't even know.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that literally they don't know the model, but I know the model. And so what you got to do is that when you think about marketing effectiveness, what actually works in terms of you achieving your objective?
Well, that's called a spray and pray model, right?
Yes.
So they're spraying out, trying and praying for a response from you. But realistically, what's the model that you use?
So relationship orientation, 100%.
There you go.
And then, like I'm going to say, we're heading into our 19th, if not our 20th year in business shortly.
Wow.
And the interesting thing is that, we still have customers today that started with us, just on 19 years ago, right? Yeah. And the interesting thing about it is that ultimately, when I look at marketing effectiveness, you've got to really decide what you want to do. So are you in the position of trying to attract a customer, or are you in a position of retaining a customer?
Correct.
And are you doing a bit of both, or are you actually okay just to maintain? And the interesting conversation is that I think that, George Silverman wrote a book called The Power of Word of Mouth Marketing, and it was written in 1960, and it's still just as relevant today. And the foundational idea is that if you went through and you had to look at your last 100 customers, or you had to look at your most profitable 100 customers, or you had to look at the customers customers that have done multiple transactions with you, last 100 of those, how did you actually meet that customer and what did you do to bring them to market? And I think about this in terms of our sales service line, our project service line, our property management service line inside of any residential real estate business. I think about this in terms of your recruitment line of your last 100 people that you've recruited. But the basic foundational concept is that ultimately there is clues in what's happened in the history of what you can make scalable into the future. And so if you're starting to think about, okay, great, what are my last 100 customers? How does that then really work out compared to how I've been allocating my marketing funds?
Correct, yeah.
So
it's a good way to look at it, actually, yeah.
So when you're thinking about that, am I going to spend more money on Facebook ads or more money on Instagram ads, or am I going to be spending more money on video content or money on social content or digital content, or am I going to be doing pop-up displays, or what are the things that I'm actually going to go and do? And I just start thinking about it. It's to have a phenomenal business, everyone thinks you got to get known. Well, sometimes you don't need to be known. Sometimes you just need to be really good at what you do, and it will bring the business in.
Correct.
And so it's thinking differently about that. But a lot of people are just I've got key rings, or now I've got squeegee stress balls and magnets and fridge magnets and it's this interesting foundational idea is that I don't think that businesses have really drilled into how they do this. A good example is property management, right? So let's say, for example, that the last 100 managements that you got last year, were those managements people that were bringing new supply to market because they bought an investment property or turned an existing property into an investment property, or were those last 100 managements takeovers from other agencies where people were really unhappy with the previous experience? And if you say, well, look, 90% of them were takeovers, then, my God, what's your marketing for takeovers look like?
Correct.
Oh, we don't have a program for that.
Yeah.
Well, then so what?
But I think where you're going with this though, mate, is actually having the time to actually work out where the origination of that client came from, and then replicating. So, for example,
but isn't that bizarre that you would say that you'd have the time for that?
No,
you're going to spend the time and the resources on the stuff that doesn't work.
See, that's the stuff that distracts us, though, Josh. Think about it. I would rather do a letterbox drop or a social media post than call back through my open home list where you've had the highest intent. And our job is to find out the intent of that person to come through the open home.
Yes.
But I'd rather do the letterbox drop.
Yes.
It's the avoidance of the obvious.
Yes.
That's where we actually got to kind of hang out in that space. Because I'm thinking right now, most of our business on new managements comes from our sales team.
Yes.
So how do we make that better? How do we mine better data? How do we, create a better experience for the agent so then that way that feeds it? But then where are we missing?
Yeah.
So we can plug that hole. I mean, so obvious, but you need to take the time to spend on it. Experiences that rapidly shaped you.
Con, this is funny, but there was a point in the business where SMS had just come out as being something you could bulk SMS.
Right.
And we were like, okay, great, this is going to be cool. And I said to Dad, look, we can buy this SMS pack where you can send SMSs. And he was like, nah. And I was like, what? He's like, nah. And I was like, oh, but I really want to do it, because it's new technology.
Yeah.
And he then said to me, he goes, well, look, I'll tell you what, if it's your own money, you can do whatever you want, but it's my money and we're not doing it. And that stuck with me. It stuck with me, and the next paycheck that came in, I took the $100 out and I
put into SMSs?
I put the SMS in, and I sent the SMS out, and the results came in, and Dad was like, "What'd you do?" I said the SMS. He goes, "Well, I didn't say you could do that." I said, "Yeah, but when it's your own money, you can do whatever you want." And that little thing has stayed with me my whole life.
Yeah,
because it's literally, I'm going to stop waiting this disease of abdication. Of my life will be better when someone gives me permission, when someone pays.
Yes,
I'm just going to do it myself.
One idea or experience, actually an experience that's rapidly changing my views at the moment, is the humbleness of being an amateur.
Yeah.
So I'm playing golf. Well, actually, let's start again. I'm not playing golf. I'm learning how to play golf, and it's been a joy, and it's been humbling to work out that I have no expertise in this field.
Yes, and
to be a student, how involved you have to be with the theory, the repetition, the listening, the adjustments, etc. And it's been a great experience. Why are you smiling at me?
There's a random golf ball at the back of my house the other day.
And that's me, mate.
I'm nowhere near a golf course.
That's me. Sorry, they're coming from the inner west straight to Balmain.
Something that's changing your view.
Con, I just think about the power of playlists. One of the things that I did over the course of the break is that each day I would type in something different. So good beach playlist, pool playlist, holiday playlist, whatever. And just listening to completely different music and different genres and what I would do and just seeing how it impacts about mood and energy and driver. And I just think that you've got this great thing. And Tommy Rawson, one of our good friends over in New Zealand, he said, oh man, I took that idea of the PTO, positive task orientation, and now I've created a PTO music playlist. And I was like, good idea. And so I've done the same. And
that's awesome.
And so then that way, when you're driving along and you're like, I can just put on that playlist, I can just listen to that. And it kind of changes the way that you think and feel and act. And so really get you to lean into that and change a lot of things for you.
Love it.